Senator Rand Paul showing up in an unusual location yesterday, the University of California, Berkeley, citadel of liberalism, and maybe after yesterday, the citadel of libertarianism, because Senator Paul talking about there in Berkeley, the title of his speech was the NSA versus your privacy. And he got a great reception on the campus yesterday. A lot of people concerned about what's happening with our intelligence agencies, the NSA and the CIA and others. Kate Tomarello is a tech reporter for The Hill who covers these issues and joins us in our studio this morning. Hi, Kate. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So Senator Paul struck a responsive chord yesterday in Berkeley. The number one thing he told the students was, I don't believe that what you say on your cell phone is any of their damn business.
Yeah, that definitely got a response.
Hard to disagree with that, right?
Yeah, I think he is definitely speaking to a sympathetic base there. Millennials and people in that age group are not looking to the government to have them spy on their cell phones, whether that's geolocation information about where they're going or what they're saying or who they're calling or what they're Snapchatting. This is not something that people even knew was happening until recently.
But it seems that every week there's more that comes out about what one of the intelligence agencies, particularly the NSA or the CIA, are up to. The latest is that the NSA is now collecting every phone call made by every citizen in one particular country and storing that information up to 30 days, and then it gets replenished as, at the end of 30 days, they recycle more calls in. Why? And do we have any idea what country this is? And, is this, where do they get the authority to do this?
Well, they would say that this is a foreign targeted program. So this is not targeting American citizens. These are not people who have Fourth Amendment protections. This is about, foreign people based abroad because it is in this specific country. I personally don't know which country it is. I would love to find out. But, I know the Washington Post, which broke this story, has been very careful not to name the country out of concerns about, sacrificing intelligence information and national security concerns. There's a question of what if there are American citizens visiting that country at that time using their cell phones? Are they going to be swept up in this big program?
Of course they are.
So, that raises concerns, and intelligence agencies go very far out of their way to say that they try to control for that, and they try to make sure they don't include Americans in these sweeping programs. But when you're collecting 100% of a country's calls for 30 days at a time, I don't know how you kind of...
And they're not only collecting them, they admit that they are listening in on some of them. They are, and now just a small percentage, because after all, there are billions of calls that they have to go through, but they are actually listening on these calls. So, doesn't this contradict everything that President Obama said, that we are not spying on average citizens?
It definitely, I bet he would say that it doesn't, but it raises the question of how necessary this vast collection is, right? So the intelligence agencies like to make the point that it's easiest to connect the dots when you have all the dots. It's easy to find out which patterns are important and what you need to look for. And if you only collect things here and there, you won't get the big picture. And I doubt they have the time to listen into the calls about, what a husband and wife are discussing they need to pick up from a grocery store. But it raises the concern that there is this vast database of calls from people who are not suspecting that the NSA is snooping in on them.
Right. You said that the Washington Post did not reveal the name of the country because for intelligence reasons. I think another reason is, I don't care what country it is, if it's Spain or Germany or France or whatever. If this became known, there would be hell to pay in terms of public relations, certainly, and protest from the leadership of the country and from the citizens of that country. Right?
Can you imagine if we found out tomorrow that China listens to all of our phone calls for 30 days at a time?
Yeah. No, good point. So this is one of the things that Senator Paul, again coming back to Berkeley, talked about yesterday with these students. You've got the phone data collection program here in this country. listening in on the cell phones of foreign leaders. It's on and on. This latest thing, every phone call of every country, every phone call of every citizen in one particular country. So Senator Paul said he thinks we need to have a special committee to look into this. Here is what he told the students yesterday that he plans when he comes back to Washington.
No one should be allowed to invade your privacy. That's why I'm announcing today that when I return to Washington, I will push for a select committee, styled after the Church Committee that investigated the abuses of power by the intelligence community in the 70s. It should be bipartisan. It should be independent and wide-reaching. It should have full power to investigate and reform those who spy on us in the name of protecting us. It should watch the watchers.
A committee to watch the watchers. Okay. So the Church Committee was really triggered by revelations that J. Edgar Hoover was spying, the CIA, FBI at the time, spying on Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders. Is there enough information today to trigger a new Church Committee?
Well, people would definitely like to see that. Earlier this week, a group of former Church Committee staffers pushed for that in an open letter to Congress and to President Obama, and they even
Church
cited...
Committee staffers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they even cited their report, which said at the time, we're concerned about the technological capabilities of the NSA because they can just collect and store so much information. So they were very almost psychic, it seems, at the time in the 1970s. The interesting thing is the Church Committee kind of led to the Senate Select Intelligence Committee. And it's not clear what Senator Paul is thinking in terms of how this new committee would be different. And in the 1970s, there were fewer oversight mechanisms for the intelligence community, and you can argue to death about whether or not those oversight mechanisms are effective, but they definitely exist on paper. And there are inspector generals at all the agencies and in the DOJ, and there's the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, which it was created after 9/11 to monitor these programs. And there's a court they have to answer to. So it's not clear what this committee that he is suggesting would add to that landscape of oversight, but it's definitely an interesting idea and one that a lot of people have called for in the past.
Well, I think the difference is that hopefully this select committee that Senator Paul is talking about would take a critical look at the NSA and the CIA rather than be a rubber stamp for their activities, which the House Intelligence and the Senate Intelligence Committees have been nothing but.
Yeah, definitely. There's a sense of cheerleading among those committees. But if you look at the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, they're the ones that earlier this year called on Obama to abolish the 215 program, the phone metadata program that collects information in theory about all American phone calls. So they have certainly, stepped in and tried to be watchdogs on this. Whether or not their suggestions are being taken seriously is something we'll see next week when the president when the president is presented with his recommendations for reform from the NSA and the DOJ. That'll be kind of the next step in terms of actually changing the landscape.
And those reforms, remind me, are coming from where?
So when the president spoke in January, he directed the NSA and the Department of Justice to kind of put forward proposals for reform. So this is definitely an internal process. It's very possible that we'll see nothing substantive just because, these people, this is what they do every day. They've justified these programs for months. They likely would like to keep them. But, we'll see what the president is presented with and what he decides to do.
So Senator Feinstein was this very powerful speech that she gave on the floor of the Senate a couple of weeks ago now, where very outraged by the fact that she believes that the CIA was actually spying on members of her committee, hacking into their computers. What's going to come of that, if anything? I mean, is she, do we know, supportive of a new select committee, or does she think they're,
well,
is it just going to be one speech and then nothing happened?
It's interesting that she kind of got so vocal when the surveillance was targeting her, because she is a staunch defender of the NSA. And
you used the phrase cheerleader before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she cheerleads the NSA and cites the necessary programs that they have and the effectiveness they've had, all of which, can be debated and is debated. But she focused very specifically on the CIA. This wasn't an attack on broader surveillance. This wasn't an attack on broader government surveillance. This was just she didn't like her staffers having their computers searched without them knowing.
Yeah.
Which is a fair concern for any member of Congress to have in terms of, separation of powers. But I would be surprised if she kind of turns around and suddenly becomes this, opponent of these big surveillance programs. And I, as far as I know, she hasn't voiced any thoughts on whether or not we need a new church committee, quote unquote. But she's in charge of what the old church committee became. So that would seem like almost no, we're not doing our job. We need you guys to step in and do it for us. I'd be surprised if that was something that she vocally supported.
New York Times reporting this morning, I was just checking, because Senator Feinstein said the CIA, they broke the law when they hacked these computers. The CIA is saying the Senate staffers broke the law when they took information they were not supposed to have taken. And so the Justice, both have asked the Justice Department to jump into this, and the Justice Department is pretty reluctant to do so, to get caught in the crossfire, if you will, between CIA and the Senate Intelligence Committee. I really think that, and let's get your comments at 866-55-PRESS. The big question is, Senator Rand Paul, did he strike an important chord yesterday at the University of California, Berkeley, where he said the intelligence agencies today so out of control that we need a new select committee like the church committee back in the 70s to watch the watchers?